Week 4, day 1 in your workbook, it's called King Saul. Okay, so before we pick back up in 1 Samuel, where we left off at the end of last week, let's kind of recap and figure out where we are, all right? So the Israelites are all living in Canaan, in the Promised Land, all right? And they're living divided up by tribe. And remember, they're all related. They're family. They're all descendants from Jacob. And like a lot of family, they don't get along. Where they're living in Canaan, they have not been able to be completely successful killing, conquering, running out everybody who had lived there in Canaan before they got there. And so the remaining original residents are pagan. They worship false gods. They're not a good influence. All right, so that's where we're going to pick up. So picking up 1 Samuel chapter 10. So the Israelites decide they want a king. Like all the cool kids in the cool countries have a king, they want a king. All right, so enter the first king of Israel, which is King Saul. Now Saul is described as tall and good looking. He's also a very successful leader. And do not get comfortable with Saul because he is anointed in chapter 10. And by chapter 13, Samuel's already having to tell him that because of disobedience, God has picked another king. All right, so the new king that God has picked is described as a man after God's own heart. Although at this point, he is not a man, he is still a boy. He's the youngest son of Jesse of Bethlehem from the tribe of Judah. And his name is David. All right, so newly anointed David gets to meet King Saul right away because by this point King Saul's crazy. He's like losing his mind, and David is recruited to come and play the lyre for him to calm him down. The lyre is like a small harp, and this works, although it probably wouldn't have if King Saul had known that it was his successor that was serenading him. All right, so the next chapter, chapter 17, tells the story of David and Goliath that most of us have probably heard, when David had to fight the giant Goliath because none of the grown men in the Israelite army were brave enough or had faith enough to stand up to him. So that's chapter 17. By chapter 18, Saul hates David. By chapter 19, Saul is trying to kill David. All right, David ends up fleeing in the next few chapters. Saul gives chase. All right, so while David is on the run, he writes some of the first of his Psalms. Now, the book of Psalms is the physical middle of your Bible. If you open it right up to the middle, you're in Psalms. Okay, so Psalms is a collection of songs, some of them praising God, some of them asking for help, some of them sad, some of them confused, thankful. They're just all over the board. All right. So, but back to 1 Samuel, picking back up in chapter 28. So Saul decides to get a medium, a sorcerer, to contact Samuel, who by now is dead. I forgot to tell you. And so he does, and Samuel is not happy about being contacted, but he tells Saul that tomorrow that Saul will be killed, and so will his oldest sons. And sure enough, the next day, Saul's oldest sons were killed, and so Saul throws himself on his own sword to avoid being killed by the enemies. So that's the end of 1 Samuel. Not a really happy, feel-good story.